Do you agree with the analysis that Casey, the numbers that Casey's given us so far?
Look, it will be tough for us to hold 3 seats in Franklin, there's no doubt about that. The lift in David O'Byrne's vote does not surprise. The reduction in the Peter George group doesn't surprise as well, but what I think does surprise is that David O'Byrne, the former Labor leader who got dumped by Labor, is level pegging with the current Labor leader, Dean Winter. And I would have thought for the Labor Party and for the leadership of the Labor Party, that will send shockwaves through the whole Labor Party infrastructure.
Well, we'll go to Sarah straight away. Sarah?
Not at all. I'm not concerned about Dean's vote or David's vote at all. I think if you compare...
The leader's got less than one quota.
Yeah, but if you compare Dean Winter to Jeremy Rockcliffe, Jeremy Rockcliffe had the luxury of being the member for Braddon for a long time before he was the Liberal Party leader. When you're the party leader, you're naturally out of your electorate a lot more than other members of the electorate. You're campaigning across the state. You don't have the ability to be campaigning at the same to the same extent that you would do if you were just the member for Franklin. Dean hadn't been in Parliament long before he became the member. I'm not concerned about his vote at all. David, again, another comparison. David is not the leader of a party. He can spend all of his time campaigning in Franklin. That's where the votes are. That's where the votes are coming from. I don't think you can compare the two, and I'm not worried about Dean's vote at all.
But what about the Premier and Jeremy Rockcliffe?
Well,
Surely he was all around the state.
Yeah, but he was the member for Braddon for what, was it 22 years before he became the leader of the Liberal Party? So
but
he had 22 years.
Before that he was Deputy Premier.
Not for 22 years he wasn't.
Dean
Not
Winter was a Mayor of Kingborough.
So he had a number of years of being able to be the member for Braddon and campaign locally in his seat.
Sarah, if you're happy with his vote, so am I. We can agree.
Mr. Abetz,
we can agree.
I'm just keen to hear from Sarah here. Even on the primary vote, it doesn't really look good for Labor tonight. Your primary vote is down to 25.1%. On these figures, at this time of night, that's nearly a 4% swing away from the Labor Party.
Yeah, well, as I said before, obviously we would have preferred more of a swing towards us. I am getting information from people out in the booths, which I can only take on face value and rely on, that we are seeing our primary vote lift and that swing is coming down. We also had some polling to show that there was a strong Labor vote amongst the pre-polls. And we know not all of those are being counted tonight as well. Look, none of us, are getting the result that we really wanted. It's not a strong result that we would have loved to have seen, but it's not a surprising result either. We're not giving up hope yet. We still think those figures will improve, and it doesn't change the fact that there is still not a majority Liberal government. That two-party preferred figure of 53% towards Labor indicates that more Tasmanians would prefer to see a Labor government than a Liberal government.
What?
There's still going to be a crossbench. A leader will still need to negotiate with that crossbench, and we haven't seen Jeremy Rockcliffe be able to do that for the last 2 goes at it that he's had.
Cassie O'Connor, just those figures in Franklin, we're likely to see 2 Liberal, 2 Labor, 1 Green, 2 independents, 1 independent fiercely anti-stadium, 1 independent fiercely pro-stadium. Is Franklin a microcosm of Tasmania, hopelessly divided?
Well, I don't think it's hopelessly divided. I think that's just a representation of the diversity of views in the electorate. And it's interesting because in the polling that I saw, Franklin was where there was the strongest vote potentially for the stadium. But what our scrutineers are telling us is that about a third of Peter George's vote is flowing on to the Greens, which is great. We're certain that we've got our second seat in Clark locked in, even though it hasn't been called yet, and I'd love to have a look at Clark at some point soon. But we've held all our 5 seats. We're still in the hunt in Braddon. We've had a really strong campaign because we've campaigned honestly about the things people really care about.
Okay, you might get your wish to hear about Clark in just a moment. And he's got Casey Farrell with him from the Labor Party, who's in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, indeed. And as you well know, Sabra, Casey Farrell made his way into Parliament a few months ago after Rebecca White announced she was stepping down and making a run for federal politics. So Casey Farrell's been representing Lions now for a few months for Labor. And it's interesting because I'm standing here almost watching Casey watch his future play out on the screen in front of us. Casey, good evening.
Good evening, Leon.
So we just had Casey Briggs say that things are looking a little bit difficult for you at the moment. How are you feeling about the way the vote's playing out?
Oh, look, I'm really relaxed about it. We've run a fantastic campaign. We've been out on the doors. We've talked to 15,000 voters in the electorate. Obviously, a short amount of time for me to be in the Parliament, and electorate like Lions is massive, so getting around the whole electorate is a challenge. But, you know, the numbers are looking all right, I think.
I know that a few people were just showing you their phones who look like they might be part of your team before we went on there. Were they showing you figures that might be a little bit more hopeful than what we've got coming through in the early stages?
I've heard a little bit of scrutineering from booths in the Derwent Valley where I'm better known, and they look pretty, decent for me. Also seeing some information from scrutineers about the vote against the government generally. You know, there's a fairly big swing against the government, and when you start looking at where those preferences are flowing, we're starting to see that on a two-party preferred basis, Labor are over 50%. You know, we're looking 53, 54 on a two-party preferred, which is showing that the state is really, this is a really big vote against the government. And, despite, as you've said, despite not necessarily all of that vote coming to Labor, we're seeing that there is a massive progressive vote compared to the last election.
Casey, that's an interesting analysis. I want Casey Briggs to be doing some diagnosis on that and interpretation. Casey versus Casey, indeed. Can I ask you, though, given the performance of the party widely, it looks like you might be lucky to have as many seats as you went into this election. Have you reflected on the strategic direction to take this path to get us to an election and not try to govern with the 10 seats that you had only a month ago?
Oh, look, I think it's much too early to be making those calls, Leon. You know, we're looking at, about 20% of the vote coming in. The pre-polls haven't come in yet, and particularly, a lot of those pre-polls they've been people voting for 3 weeks. What we've seen from them is that they're coming our way a little bit as well. So we really need to understand what the makeup of the whole Parliament looks like before we can look at that. And realistically, even looking across the board, even looking at the Liberal vote, we're looking at a much more progressive Parliament than what we've had, a few weeks ago before the election was called.
Casey, it's been good to see you down here this morning and deciding the tally room's the place to watch the turnout of the vote and potentially your future unfold on the floor here.
Thank you.
Back to you in a moment, guys, but what I can tell you from the floor of the tally room, and as I look around me right now, there are maybe 250, 300 people, maybe more, who have made their way down here. People of all stripes and colours, and it seems an increasing trend that people are starting to dress up and to make a little bit of an event of it, which is interesting to watch as well. But we'll bring you more colour from the floor of the tally room in just a moment.
Thank you, Leon. Well, Cassie O'Connor asked for some more figures in Clark. I think Casey Briggs has got them.
Yeah, Clark is firming up a little bit. It's actually probably the clearest of the electorates at this point. Let's just take another look at the figures with nearly 30% of the vote in. The Liberals on more than 2 quota, the Greens on just over 2 quota, Labor on just under 2 quota, Christy Johnston on 1.4 quota. This is looking like a status quo result in terms of the party breakdown. 2, 2, 2 and 1. We're pretty happy to say that at this point. So the party breakdown in Clark will look very similar to, identical to the last Parliament. The one thing that we are looking at there potentially being a change is in the Liberal representation. Marcus Vermey, the butcher, is running top of the Liberal Party ticket there, 0.85 quota. He's been elected to Parliament. So Marcus Vermey is elected. Simon Barakis and Madeleine Ogilvie are in competition for the second seat, and they are relatively close together at this point. So we're not going to determine which one has been re-elected at this point, but one of them will be defeated. So the Liberal situation, the situation in Clark is status quo, except one Liberal swapped out for another at this point. While I've got you, can I just do another quick look at the statewide totals? And I just want to make a couple of points about this. Liberal 39.1, we're at 25.6% of the vote counted. Liberals 39.1, Labor 25.2. Since about 2% counted, that gap has been very steady. This has settled down. This is a 14-point gap between the Liberal Party and the Labor Party, and that has been constant. So this is an election in which it's become pretty clear. We are seeing a shift away on primary votes from the Labor Party, a shift toward the Liberal Party. The Greens are modestly up. The Nationals have only got 1.7%, and others are actually relatively steady because we're seeing people like Christy Johnston and Peter George get very high votes indeed. At this point, it's very hard to see Labor gaining any seats. They may well retain the 10 they have. It's hard to see them gaining any more. And we're getting to the point where it's hard to see even the Labor Party plus the Greens being larger than the Liberal Party. So the Liberals, Jeremy Rockliff, would be very happy with these figures he's seeing. We're not saying the Liberals have got a majority, but they are certainly the larger party and by quite some margin.
Casey Briggs, thank you very much for that. Your take on that, Erica Betts, and also the fact that Marcus Vermey looks like third time lucky running in Clark, but you look like you might lose either Simon Barakis or Madeleine Ogilvie.
Marcus Vermey ran a fantastic campaign. He's an exceptionally personable character. You can't run a butcher shop without knowing how to deal with the public, and he has done that exceptionally well. And as more people got to see him campaign after campaign, the more they've warmed to him. So congratulations to Marcus Vermey, well done. In relation to Simon and Madeleine, both of them very good, strong performers, and it looks as though one of them may not be rejoining us, and that'll be a matter of regret. It would have been good to have three, but I have detected there has been a lift in the Clark vote, and it may well be because of Marcus Vermey. So well done.
Just to be clear, the two sitting members, Simon Barakis and Madeleine Ogilvie in Clark, watched their votes go backwards. And I don't know what that says about both of them, but their personal votes on the material I have on the screen is that they've gone backwards.
Oh, Marcus Vermey has run an exceptionally strong campaign, and with a Hare-Clark system, that is what occurs. And I would imagine in Franklin, for example, and we'll have to have a close look at the figures, but Rosalie Woodruff's vote has also gone back, as I understand it.
Polled very strongly in the face of Peter George.
Well, there you go. You're making excuses for her. And I'm saying Marcus Vermey has polled very strongly, and therefore in those circumstances you can expect a decline in other people's votes. So it is one of those things in the Hare-Clark system when you have a popular candidate like Bridget Archer, like Gavin Pearce, that it will impact other people's votes from the previous elections.
Sarah Lovell, you'd have to be disappointed in Labor's polling so far in Clark.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're disappointed, of course, but we're not giving up yet. We're confident that we'll hold out. We've held our 2 seats in Clark. We're confident that we will hold 2 seats in every electorate. There was polling throughout the campaign that showed that there wasn't going to be a huge changes in the number of seats that anyone held, but it was potentially the makeup of the crossbench that would change. I'm still yet to see a pathway for the Liberal Party to form a functioning parliament from the crossbench that we're seeing likely to be elected currently. And we'll be very keen to hear what Jeremy Rockliff says later tonight about his intentions around that, whether he acknowledges that that's something that needs to change.
Are you ruining the opportunity that you had only a matter of weeks ago for Jean Winter to have gone to the governor?
No, we're not, because we made that decision knowing that this was always a risk. You never know the outcome of an election, and being so close to last year's election, it was highly likely that the numbers weren't going to change a great deal, particularly with a 5-week campaign. That's a very short period of time to be able to put your case forward. If we had tried to take government before the election, we wouldn't have had credibility to do that.
Let's go now. Sorry, Sarah. Let's go now to Leon Compton, who's on the tally room floor with a Labor candidate for Clark, Luke Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Guy. And for people that might not know Luke Martin, who obviously came out of representing the salmon industry, representing the tourism industry, had spent time on Glenorchy Council. And the minute he announced that he was going to work in Labor leader Dean Winter's office, I thought he'd probably be running sooner rather than later. It turned out, Luke Martin, it was sooner. How are you feeling looking at the figures tonight about how you have gone in Clark?
Look, I mean, ours was a strategy to try and get to third for Labor and hope that we would be in a position to win a third seat. I think the Glenorchy boost is still to kick in, so I'm still semi-confident I'll end up in that result. But in a dogfight with John Cromer, who's done very well. But I think the reality is we're going to fall short of any third seat. So that's the reality of the math.
And that was also the reality of a pathway really towards improving on your vote, was to pick up a third seat in Labor. How do you explain the way the party's gone, or the way it seems the party's gone, Luke Martin?
Look, I mean, the reality is I spent pretty much the last 4 weeks in the streets of Glenorchy and Moona and Claremont, and I think one of the fundamental problems we had is we didn't present enough of a compelling reason for people to change. I think people understood the reasons for the election. I think people were looking for an alternative, and I felt that we hadn't done enough, frankly, to be able to convince them to shift over to Labor. I think they felt safe parking their vote in independent. And obviously there were some significant issues that hovered away in the back of people's minds that we weren't the answer to.
It's been much discussed on the floor tonight that when it came to the stadium, which has no doubt come up on the doors, people looked at Labor, looked at the Liberal Party and thought, well, at least we know the Liberal Party will be consistent if they're going to have the same position.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, the stadium wasn't the issue that people were raising. It was certainly... People were just frustrated about the lack of services and access to services. So our messages around health and access to GPs and cost of living relief did actually resonate with people. But certainly the people who ranked the stadium as their issue, whether it was for or against, didn't look to us as a solution. The people who are very positive about the stadium, which certainly in the northern suburbs there were a lot of them, they didn't see us as an option. And obviously I've got a history of that project that's quite extensive. So, I had a number of people who said, look, I'm pro-stadium, you're pro-stadium, but I just don't trust you. And that's, I understand that. And similarly, I think with the people who were very opposed to the stadium, they saw that as their reason not to shift their vote to us, and I think park their vote with Independent or with Christie fundamentally in the northern suburbs, and I think her vote tonight shows that.
Can I ask how you're feeling? Like, it's obviously draining. You've run a six-week campaign. You've been out and doing a lot of that. You've seen the Labor Party now looks like either having to try and form government with 10 seats, maybe 9, or another term of opposition. How does that feel?
Yeah, look, I mean, I obviously did this for a reason. I've said a couple of times, the last 2 or 3 years dealing with this government in my professional roles has been really difficult, really frustrating. I feel like they're just a government that had just run out of energy, and behind, I guess, the social media construct of a Premier, we'd actually scratch the surface. It's very difficult to get any outcomes from him. And obviously when you look at things like the Spirit, when you look at the budget, when you look at so many areas of investment that are falling away, as someone who's sort of worked for business, I felt time for change, and I felt this is the most constructive way I can contribute to that. Obviously the timing of the election, probably hasn't helped being so quick after the decision, but again, it is what it is. We'll see a parliament formed, and I think on the floor, and obviously I think that resonance for change, which is certainly out there, and I think if you look at the majority of people who in Tasmania today voted for parties other than the government. So
look, we've got to go, but can I just ask you, if the Labor Party do end up with 10, should you try and form a government?
Well, I don't think that'll be a decision. Yeah, well, based on the results tonight, Leon, I don't think they'll be part of that decision making. That'll be a decision for the caucus, and of course the Parliament that'll have to make that decision. So we'll see.
Luke Martin, thanks for talking with us tonight. Guy and Sabra from the floor of the tally room, only a few metres away from where you're sitting. Back to you.
Thank you, Leon. Time now to check in with Casey Briggs, who's got an update on both Bass and Braddon.
Yeah, let's start with Bass, Guy. First of all, here are the party totals. Once again, might actually start with Labor and then come back and look at the overall picture. Labor's got just over 2 quota. They will win 2 seats in Bass. But I just want to show you the Labor ticket because it's quite an interesting picture. Janie Finley's got basically a quota. She will be re-elected. Labor does not have Michelle O'Byrne in this seat this election, and it's feeling that. Labor's vote is down in Bass, and there is really no clear second place. In fact, everyone's basically getting a roughly random, even amount of the vote. So Janie Finley's elected. I could not tell you who the second person is there. Take your pick of, maybe Jess Green or Jeff Lyons, but really, who knows? Let's come back and look at the party totals in Bass. So that's 2 for Labor, 3 for the Liberals guaranteed, 1 for the Greens. That adds up to 6, which means 1 seat left over. So let's look at what's left. You've got the Liberal Party with 0.39 of a quota. You've got the Greens with 0.37 left over. But then look further down. You've got the Shooters and Fishers with 1/3 of a quota. You've got George Rosé with 1/4 of a quota. It could well be that we see the people at the bottom of the ticket eventually feed in and help the Liberal Party. The Greens may well stall out at that 1.37. We're not calling this seat yet, but the Liberals are a decent chance of a 4th in Bass based on this overflow that we've got. And the Liberal Party, if I just jump quickly to Braddon as well, is also a chance of a 4th in Braddon. They're actually on more than 4 quota. And again, we've got this similar situation where you've got Nationals and Shooters and Fishers and Farmers sitting on, about 0.4 of a quota. Some of that may end up coming back and helping to shore up a 4th seat for the Liberal Party in Bass. They may not need the shoring up if they remain over 4, but there's more help as well beyond their primary vote. So that could well end up being a 4. Labor could fall back to 1 even, but maybe 1 or 2. Craig Garland's vote, I think we'd say he's likely elected at this point, but that has been falling through the evening, so we're not calling that one just yet, but he's in a very strong position. A little bit to work out still here, but potentially the Liberal Party, the government, could gain a seat in Bass, gain a seat in Braddon.
All right, Casey Briggs, thank you very much for that. And it's timely that we've got Craig Garland with us now, independent candidate in Braddon. Craig, you're looking very strong. You haven't quite got a quota in your own right just yet. How confident are you that you will be able to manage to get across the line?
I'm a bit more confident than I was last year, but still not overconfident. I'll just let it run its course and see where we end up.
Craig Garland, it's Leon Compton here, and so it sounds like there's still a lot of work to be done. How do you explain, as you've watched the campaign unfold, how do you explain what seems to be a falling vote for Labor in Braddon from what you've heard out and about on the doors?
I can't, Leon, to be honest. I have no idea why people have gone that way. You'd have to ask a few of those voters, I think.
Craig, you've talked about, and you and I have talked about how it took maybe 8 months to a year to actually get your feet under the desk and learn the ropes of Parliament. How will you approach this new Parliament and any new deals that you need to do if you're returned with whomever seeks your support after the weekend?
Well, it'll all come down to who gets elected and who's willing to form government and the numbers at the end of the day. So I'll just have to wait and see where it falls before, I guess, the discussions will start. That's how I see it at this point. I'm not getting carried away. I've got a better result at this stage than where I was last year. But as you know, under Hare Clark, anything could happen from here. So I'm not counting my chickens by any means.
Craig Garland, there's a lot of maybes in all of that, but I mean, are you suggesting that you might have a different approach to negotiating with the Labor Party compared if you approach with what seems more likely, the Liberal Party for support?
No, the discussions I've had with the Labor Party, they're more than willing to work with me, and the discussions I've had with the Liberal Party, there's no grey areas. They know the areas that I feel strongly about, and I've learned a lot out of what's just happened. Nobody expected us to be going to another election. The view I had, it was a no confidence motion in the Premier, not the government. So next time around, I probably will do things a little bit different. I understand now the reason why they need a written agreement going in to form government, so I won't discount that idea. But really, I'm not going to get too carried away until the results are final and I know where I stand and also who will be putting their hand up to form government.
Craig Garland, it is an interesting point, though. I mean, one of the reasons that we're here is because you supported a vote of no confidence in Premier Jeremy Rockliff. Can we press reset? Like, if the Parliament goes back and he calls you and asks for your support again, can you have confidence in him now, given the vote that you took against him only a month or two ago?
Look, I'm sure Jeremy has learned as much out of this as I have and everybody else. You know, the expectations of the people of Tasmania, we're elected to form government and we have to work together in a collaborative manner and sit at the table and discuss our differences and agree on where we can go. Those areas that we all agree on, let's get to work on them. Let's show that we can make this government work. That'll be my approach if at the end of the day I do get elected. And if Jeremy's the Premier, we've already had discussions. We've tried to push things along. It didn't work, but now we have to make it work. There is no other choice than to make it work. And like I've said right from the outset, I put my hand out to work in a collaborative manner with the government, and that's what I'll be continuing to do so if I get re-elected.
And Craig, can I take a punt? You will get re-elected on the back of the Green preferences, as you did last time. You've got a higher primary vote this time, and I think we might be seeing each other in the Parliament again. So good luck and well done.
He got elected
thanks, Eric,
because he's a
but I
good
might remind
member.
You go, Craig, and then we'll wrap it up. What did you want to say, Craig?
Well, last year, Eric, I think if I recall, you said I had no chance.
That's right.
So,
Yes, that's right.
And I think we had Felix Ellis, who's your next door neighbour, describing you as worse than the Greens, if I'm reading the subtext of his press release of a couple of days ago. Right, but there we are. Craig Garland, good to talk to you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're watching Tasmania Votes live from the ABC Election Centre at the Tally Room here in Hobart. I'm Sabra Lane.
And I'm Guy Stainer. It's 8:45. We've got 34% of the vote counted, which is about the same number of votes that were cast in pre-polling. Let's get the latest on the count with Casey Briggs.
Yes, I'm just studying a table as I come to talk to you, just to check that the thing I'm about to say is correct, and it is. So, first of all, I want to take you quickly to Franklin, where we can take a look at the party totals here. The Liberals on 2.5 quota, Labor on just under 2, Peter George 1.5. That's remaining high. Peter George has been elected. Peter George will be a member of the next Tasmanian Parliament. We have one Green. David O'Byrne is in with a shot as well. He's not defeated, so we could end up in a situation where the Liberal Party loses one seat in Franklin. Labor may be trending toward 2, so there'll be 2, 1 Green, Peter George and David O'Byrne. That may be the shape of Franklin by the end of this count, so that's quite an interesting result in its own right. Now, let me just say a couple of bigger, broader picture things as well. This is remaining, as it has been much of the count. Liberal Party 39.3% of the vote, 14 points ahead of Labor. Labor has brought this election on through its no confidence vote. Its vote has gone backwards. Labor's vote is the worst it has been in Tasmania since the hair clerk system began in 1903 in its history. So this is the worst Labor Party vote in Tasmania ever. Yet, there is still a way Labor could form government. That is the peculiarity of Hair Clark. Now, it will be a very difficult government. You'd much rather be the government. I want to show you the chamber we've got at the moment. Let's go. These are the seats that we've given away. Liberals 13, Labor 8, Greens 5 and 2 others. Colour in a few we think are likely. I think that gets us up to 13 Liberals, 3 others, and then 8 and 5. Let's say Labor get to 10, they retain their seats. There are 5 Greens, that gets you to 15. Can Labor then manage to work with Christy Johnston, Peter George, potentially David O'Byrne, potentially Craig Garland? Well, maybe. It's a very difficult parliament. It's a parliament that Labor has to navigate with a bunch of people who are opposed to the stadium in particular. But on the other side, the Liberal Party may get to 15, maybe. Let's say 15 for argument's sake for the moment, only needing 3 votes, but you need those same independent votes that, again, have the same views. There is a question mark about what this next government will look like. We've heard from our reporter Adam Langenberg earlier that Labor's prepared to consider trying to form a government with 10 seats. It'd be a very messy, complicated-looking government. And it's just an extraordinary situation we're in, where Labor's vote has gone backwards in an election that Labor instigated. It's had its worst result ever, but we're not quite sure who the next Premier will be still.
And Casey, just to jump in there, my understanding is the admin committee of the Labor Party met this morning and decided 10's the number. From there, we will try. And I've got more than one person telling me that. So 10... give it a try to form government one way or the other, which ironically, of course, is exactly what they didn't want to do only after the no confidence motion and the governor got involved, and indeed after the last state election in which Rebecca White was bumped before she had a chance to try.
But Leon, what a perverse result that would be. Labor on its lowest vote ever since 1903 in 122 years, and then claim victory and government out of that. That would be a perverse result. And something which the Tasmanians would not accept.
Claiming victory from a low base. What it's about is a parliament has been elected by the Tasmanian community, and we need to make that parliament work. Now, we're looking like we're going to have a crossbench that is much more closely aligned with the Labor Party than they would be with the Liberal Party. Who is better positioned? This is where the crossbench will really be critical. And those decisions that will need to be made by those independent members in particular will be critical. And they need to think long and hard about who they want to support into government, because do they support a Premier and a government who they don't closely align their values with, or do they support a government who they are more closely aligned with? We're not in the world of black and white in the parliament anymore. We're not in the world of Labor and Liberal, left and right. We're in a world where we have minority governments that are elected by the people more than once, twice in a row now, and we need to make that work. And so it's going to be up to those independent members and that crossbench as to how they want to make that work and who they think can make it.
But will you have the personnel to even form a ministry?
Well, the ministry is not just made up by lower house members. There are 3 Labor members in the Legislative Council too, Eric, don't forget. And in fact,
one's the
the Liberal government had
president.
to do the same thing. The Liberal government had to do the same thing in this last parliament. If Labor do take government...
Sarah, can we confirm that you'll give it a go? Like, is it on now for 10 seats?
That we will see the makeup of the parliament at the end of tonight. We might not even know by the end of tonight too, by the way, where there's still a lot of pre-polls to be counted and preference flows to be distributed. We want to wait and see who's elected and have conversations with those people. But I will be very clear that we won't be making deals. It will be a Labor government with a Labor agenda, and if there is a crossbench who is willing to support that, we will absolutely work with them.
Surely with the lowest vote in Tasmanian history for the Labor Party, shouldn't Dean Winter be getting on the phone and conceding defeat to Liberal Party headquarters?
I know that you would love things to be the way they were 50 years ago, Eric, but they're not. That's not the reality of today.
This is 120 years ago.
You'd love it to be 120 years ago, I'm sure.
No, it is the lowest vote ever. It is the lowest vote ever.
Can I just jump in for one tick as well, Sabra? Sorry, I know you want me to move on. I'm told the Premier is going to be speaking. If you hadn't mentioned this, sorry, I was out on the floor a bit earlier, but the Premier is due to come down and speak as early as 9:30, so not too far away.
All right, now, and it's a timely occasion right now to go to someone who definitely has been elected to the Tasmanian Parliament. Peter George, independent candidate in Franklin, joins us now from Lindisfarne. Peter George, congratulations.
Thank you very much, Sabra. I tell you what, it's this has been a very happy, joyful campaign, and I've got some very, very loving supporters.
Oh, well, Peter George, I'm sure those volunteers behind you will be happy you don't have them out on the side of the road raising placards as they have been for the last 6 weeks. How did it feel, Peter George, hearing Sarah Lovell say if we form government with, say, 10 seats, 11 seats, 9 seats, it'll be a Labor government with a Labor agenda? I mean, what does that mean? Well, how does that sound to someone like you who might want to have your say and have some of your agenda injected there as well?
Let me say that I've been watching the ABC broadcast a bit, and I can already hear the squabbling between Labor and Liberal. Honestly, we have got to get a much more mature Parliament than a bunch of squabblers. We've got 35 members of Parliament, and I will be a member of the crossbench. And if neither of the parties can speak to the crossbench, that is their problem. It is not the problem of the crossbench, nor will it be the problem of the Greens. We need some maturity from those two old parties to negotiate a way through that gives us 4 years of stable government for the benefit of all Tasmanians, not for party political interests.
And so, Peter George, if you offer that, what would you like in exchange? If you offer that 4 years of stability, I mean, that could well require you to do some hard work as well. If you're offering 4 years of stable government, what would you want in response?
What I would want for stable government is a real focus on better education outcomes that benefits young Tasmanians and helps teachers to achieve what they can do. Better housing outcomes, including reducing the 5,000 people on the waiting list to get proper shelter over their heads. Rebuilding our health system so that it actually helps Tasmanians. But my bottom line is this. Let's face it, we cannot afford a stadium that will end up at $2 billion. We don't have the ability to build that now. We cannot be bullied by the AFL. We can have two teams, men's and women's teams, without a stadium. And especially as we're paying $130 million at York Park in Launceston to improve the facilities there. It's just ludicrous. Secondly, we have to stop the decimation of our waterways by the multinational salmon farms. We have to stop supporting them, and we have to stop the expansion into our waters. And thirdly, we all need to agree on a properly financed integrity commission that is able to do its job and restore Tasmanians' faith in their government, their bureaucracy, and in public life.
Wow, that is a big agenda, given that's the will of a lot of the crossbench that we're hearing from today, Peter George. It'll be interesting to see how the Labor or Liberal Party manage that conversation. Have you spoken to both parties in the last 24 hours? Have they reached out and spoken to you, to your team?
All I've heard from the party so far is abuse that I'm apparently a radical, whereas in fact my politics in any other part of the world would be considered so much middle of the road that I'd probably be run over. The silence from the parties is not unexpected, let's face it, but I tell you what, they need to start getting their act together. They need to start talking to the crossbench, because the truth of the matter is this election has shown, like the last election, and they should get used to it, never again in Tasmania will there be a majority government. Minority governments work well around the world. So I call on Minister Abetz and I call on Sarah Lovell to, hey, stop trading barbs, start talking to each other and start concentrating on the betterment of Tasmania, because if you can't do that, you don't deserve to be in Parliament.
Peter George, Sabra Lane here. Do you have confidence in either Jeremy Rockcliffe or Dean Winter in being able to negotiate with a large crossbench?
I'm sorry, you'll have to say that again.
I'm sorry, Peter George, it's Sabra Lane here. Do you have confidence that either Jeremy Rockcliffe or Dean Winter can negotiate with a large crossbench?
Do I have confidence that Jeremy Rockcliffe or Dean Winter or whoever leads the parties after this election can negotiate with a crossbench? No, I don't. They have shown an incapability to do anything apart from being self-serving and looking after themselves. Let's be really serious about this. There are going to be 35 MPs in the lower house, and they need to focus not on their own interests, not on the top end of town, but on ordinary, everyday Tasmanians. That's something I can do. If they want to sort of accuse you of being radical and sort of, what am I? I think I'm as green as the C6 sailor as far as Eric Betts is concerned. That's a clever insult, great. But hey, let's put the campaign in the back burner now. The campaign is over. Let's collaborate collaborate. Let's show some real maturity. These are two old parties. Let's hope they can grow up.
Peter George. Peter George, thanks for joining our coverage tonight, and again, congratulations. Now, we're going to go to Selena Bryan for a big overview of what's happening across the state.
So we can see that the Liberals have no doubt had a good night tonight, and they are going to finish as the party with the most seats in the parliament. But as we heard the panel just discussing a little earlier, there is still a chance for Labor to form a government with the support of the crossbench. If we look at the crossbench as it is now at the moment, the Greens have retained all of their 5 seats that they came into this election with. If we move them across to the Labor's side, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We can see that they then have come up to the same amount of seats as the Liberals, and there are still some independents on the crossbench that they could work with as well. Christy Johnston there, she did offer supply to the Liberals at the last election, in the last parliament. Leading into this election, she said that she wouldn't do any deals and she wouldn't offer confidence, but that question of supply is still on the table as well. And she is in parliament more closely aligned with the Labor vote and the way they vote in parliament than she is with the Liberals. So she could come down to there as well. We've just heard from Peter George that he wants to see stable government for 4 years. So if he was to see that Labor offers the most potential for a stable government and a stable minority parliament, that he might align with them too. So who else is in the mix? We also have David O'Byrne as a potential MP retaining his seat. He was a veteran Labor member for years. He is an independent now and he's contesting as that and again, but he could potentially fill another spot on the Labor side. So you can see, and then we also have Craig Garland too as a potential independent getting re-elected. He could potentially side with Labor as well. Then they're only 1 seat short of forming a government that could work on the floor of the House. So while the Liberals are in front at the moment, we can see that they're well ahead, and that's unlikely to change at this point given the number of seats remaining. There is still a question of who will form the next government.
Selena, thanks for that. Casey Briggs, you've got an update for us on the touchscreen.
Yeah, we've talked a bit about Labor's numbers and, you know, what are the possible pathways for Labor to cobble together some kind of government. We should probably balance the ledger and talk about the Liberals' path as well. We've got the Liberal Party on 13 seats at the moment. We think there are a pretty good chance of getting, well, at least 14 or 15 even. Best case scenario, let's say outside chance, I don't think this is the most likely scenario, but outside chance is 17. You know, if the Liberals are getting that higher number, well, they're walking into government, you would presume. If they're sitting on a number more like 14 or 15, the scenarios become a bit more interesting, as you've all been discussing. So there is actually still a fair bit of variability and a number of scenarios before us, let's put it that way. So that's the thing I'll say about the Liberal Party. The other thing I just want to say is bring your attention to some defeated members. We've got 3 defeated members of the last parliament that will not be in the next one, and they are the 3 former Jackie Lambie Network MPs. Rebecca Pentland has been defeated, Miriam Beswick has been defeated, Andrew Jenner has just been, we've just marked as defeated as well. And I'll show you the seat of Lyons to demonstrate why that is. In the seat of Lyons, here are the party group totals. The Nationals are sitting on 0.33, so just 4%. It's very hard. They're at nearly half the figure of the Shooters, Fishers, Farmers candidate, and even within the Nationals ticket, let's have a look at it. There are 5 candidates here. Andrew Jenner is sitting on half the vote of John Tucker. So Andrew Jenner would have to both beat John Tucker and then beat the Shooters, Farmers, Fishers party. That's just not going to happen. So Andrew Jenner has been defeated, and frankly, John Tucker isn't really in with a shot either. But the 7th seat there, we've still got this 0.6 with the Shooters and Fishers that could become very interesting as the count goes on. You know, there could be a Shooters, Fishers candidate being elected that would presumably help the Liberal Party return to government if they end up in one of the better scenarios for the government. So a lot still to play for.
And timely figures, Casey, because standing by to talk to us now is Andrew Jenner, the former member. Andrew Jenner, Casey Briggs has just announced that you have been defeated. What are your reflections on the Jackie Lambie Network experiment and your 16 months in Parliament?
Oh, look, it's been great. It's been such an experience. I wouldn't have changed it for the world. And look, if I've been defeated, that's great. I was hoping to get John over the line this time, but you know, politics is a funny old game.
Andrew Jenner, it's Leon Compton here. Do you regret supporting a vote of no confidence in Jeremy Rockliff? Ultimately, it led to where you find yourself tonight, which is no longer with a job in Parliament.
No, not at all, because that wouldn't be who I am. I'd rather do what was best for what I felt was for Tasmanians at that time. We were talking about the ferries, the GBEs, and obviously the budget. So, and I'd been fairly vocal on those things, so I couldn't not vote for it. So, no, not at all. No, look, as I said, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm great. I'm really pleased Craig's in. I'm pleased Peter George is in. So, and Christie, they'll hold them accountable.
Andrew Jenner, Airlie Ward here. Can I just ask what your advice would be then to newcomers? You had a very steep learning curve 14 months or so ago. What would you not do, or would you advise others to do if they're coming in a similar situation, not belonging to a major party?
I think the most important thing is not to rush into a supply and confidence agreement. You know, find out what you want, what's best for the people that you represent, and work forward with that. And you know, the rest of it is just mechanics. It's just learning how the actual Parliament works. And yes, it does take, as Craig said, at least 12 months to get your feet under the desk. But you know, that'll always be the same when you're new into politics. But definitely to make sure your supply and confidence agreement, if that's the way you're going to go, make sure it suits you as well as it suits them, because there's nothing worse than getting halfway through, because that doesn't also set for a stable government.
Andrew Jenner, commiserations, but thanks for your time.
No, thank you very much.
Okay, Erica Betts, can we now say that the Nationals tilt has well and truly failed here? And your thoughts on the possible option of 17 seats?
Look, the National Party has tried to get a foothold in Tasmania year after year and failed year after year, and hopefully they will desist in the future. That said, Andrew Jenner, John Tucker, Miriam Beswick, all good people that I know well, but we differ on a few things. Look, the possibility of 17 seats, can I confess, when I joined the panel tonight, everything was crossed for us to get a majority government, but the suggestion being made now that with the increase, and I stress this, the increase in the Liberal vote, that we might be on the cusp of 17 seats is, I've got to say, beyond my personal expectations, and it's a wonderful result. And might I use this opportunity to pay credit, one, to Jeremy Rockliff, Sam McQuestion, and the Liberal team in headquarters, and if I may also to my campaign manager Heath Michael and Christy Johnson, who, a different Christy Johnson might I add, who helped me very much during this campaign.
The message that we heard from Peter George, whoever is in the position to be in Parliament, to be negotiating or running in a hung Parliament, a minority government, that they needed to take a more collaborative approach with the independent crossbench.
Yeah, look, of course you do, and when I was Senate leader, that was something that I did on a daily basis, so I know what Peter George is talking about, but can I say, with the deepest of respect to Peter, that it's not all a one-way street, that whoever that he wants to deal with has to concede everything that he wants, and when he says stop the name calling and grow up, well, calling others zombies is not exactly a mature approach to this. The good news is the campaign's over, and I think there is a mindset of people now to work collaboratively and get the Parliament underway, whatever its form might be. But the name calling has been coming from both sides with respect to Peter George, and
so you're not just a bunch of squabblers?
Oh, absolutely not.
It might surprise Eric.
And look, the vast majority of the stuff that goes through Parliament goes through without a division because everybody is agreed that which is being put forward by the government, or, as in the last Parliament by David O'Byrne on one occasion, that it went through on the voices, nobody objected. So there has been a lot of collaboration, and as Leader of the House, can I say I dealt, I thought, very well with Vicar Bailey from the Greens, Shane Broad from Labor and the crossbench, and we made it work. The Parliament worked, but
Eric,
it was the policies that blew
I wanted to say, it might surprise you and probably a lot of other people, but I agree with you on a point that you made there, and I think Andrew Jenner made it really well as well. And also, I do want to recognise Andrew and the other members that have lost their seats tonight. This is tough, and it's none of us enjoy seeing anybody lose
Been
their
there,
seats.
done that, so I know what it's like. Yep.
But I agree with your point, and the point that Andrew made is that we need cool heads to be making decisions. And you know, Peter George is obviously caught up in the excitement of his election campaign and his success tonight, and well done to him. But it is incumbent on every single member that is being elected to this Parliament to act with maturity, and he might find himself having to make some decisions that will require some kind of compromise, as will every member of Parliament, I suspect.
He will have to deal with one of the zombies.
We do need cool heads in Tasmanian politics at the moment, and there's no cooler head in the tally room at the moment than Casey Briggs, who's got an update on Braddon.
I've got to say, with all the people in this room, it is starting to get a little bit warm in here, but we're trying to remain level-headed. Let's look at Braddon. You'll have noticed, you'll have seen, we've only got 4 seats that we've called there and 3 still in doubt. I'm going to say this seat is firming up. I'm going to talk you through what the likely result is here, but we are leaving a little bit of uncertainty in it because of a few peculiarities and because of the large pre-poll vote, and we haven't got any of that. So let's talk through the most likely scenario. The Labor Party, this has been tracking down a little bit. They were on over 4 quota at the start of the night. It's coming down below 4. Having said that, we still think they are likely to win 4 at this point in Braddon, so that would be a gain of 1 for the Liberal Party in Braddon. Labor is trending just below 2 quota. That would probably be enough to see them hold the 2 seats they've got in Braddon. Craig Garland is probably trending toward election. He's retained that sort of nearly a quota level for quite some time. So that would become a result that is 4 Liberal, 2 Labor, 1 Craig Garland. The Greens are sitting here on 0.58 quota. They're not really there's no friends for the Greens in the candidates that are remaining, so it's very hard to see that getting much higher than where it is. So really the only hope for a group like the Greens at this point is there's something coming in the pre-polls that will look substantially different, that's going to sort of upset this cart a little bit. But really it's looking like 4-2-1. And if I bring that up on the chamber, it'll just show you where we're trending toward in Braddon, if we haven't quite got there fully yet. This is where we are on the numbers on the bottom of your screen. 13 Liberal, 8 Labor, 5 Greens, 2 others. And if I add those 3 likelies in Braddon, it gets you to 14, 9, 5 and 3. So that's the addition of Craig Garland, 1 Liberal and 1 Labor MP. That's where Braddon's going. We're just waiting on a few more votes there to firm that up.
All right, Casey Briggs, thank you very much for that. Now we're going to go to Leon Compton, who's on the tally room floor. Leon, who have you got for us?
I've got Jamie with us tonight, Sabra, and we're actually just behind you at the moment. You might be able to notice in the background shots some waving of slogans and placards and people in T-shirts starting to gather, which I'm not sure I'm so keen on. But Jamie's been good enough to have a chat to us. He is one of the younger Liberals who's been out on the campaign trail. Jamie, good evening to you.
Good evening.
Now, tell me about the campaign. You've been volunteering. Who have you been volunteering for?
Well, so I'm in the electorate of Franklin, so I've been volunteering for all of the candidates in Franklin, as well as Clark, because they're nearby as well. We've got some good candidates.
You look like you're pretty strong on the wobble board. Have you got developed some fitness with that over the course of the campaign?
Definitely, I reckon my arms are getting pretty strong. You learn how to do it pretty well at 6 o'clock in the morning out on the streets, so...
Jamie, you're also president of the UTAS Young Liberals. Tell me about how you've seen the figures as they've come in tonight. What are you seeing out of the result as it's revealed itself so far?
Well, the results so far are looking good for us, for the Liberals, but it's still hard to say. It's only early times, and as we've seen, that it can change pretty quick, so we can only hope for the best so far.
And just a quick one, how would you describe the vibe of the tally room here tonight?
Depending on which area you're in, it can change. We're corner of the blue. It's we're feeling pretty good, but again, it's hard to tell. So everyone, I think, is just happy to be here and all taking part in the democratic process.
For people that may not, thank you, Jamie, for talking with us, by the way. Thanks for having a chat. For people that might not understand what's going on here tonight, our coverage is coming to you from the floor of the tally room. Think of a very large ballroom with the ABC's panel all set up in one corner. But if you have a look out beyond me at the moment and we zoom out there, you can see literally hundreds of people gathered to take in what's going on. Now, you might notice a growing number of people, Sabra and Guy, who are gathered in front of the podium. And what we believe is that at about 9:30, so in about 15 minutes from now, Premier Jeremy Rockliff, or Liberal leader Jeremy Rockliff, will come down and address the crowd. So we're expecting that. We'll also have Labor leader Dean Winter give his interpretation of what the results mean for tonight, and Dr Rosalie Woodruff as well. But there's a wonderful vibe. You might be able to see kids and young people, hello there, winding their way through. We've got a young superstar, hello there, mate. Can you come and have a look at this gentleman here with his star glasses on? So it's a couple of days of school holidays left, lots and lots of people here to enjoy democracy. And it's all fun and enjoyable. We're proud of the fact that we have the last tally room in the country. But what's also significant, when we asked Andrew Hawkey, the Electoral Commissioner, about this a little earlier tonight, you know, we're the last. Are we like the dinosaurs? Are we on our way out too? And he said, no. In a time of politics being challenged, of integrity in politics being questioned, the tally room is a critical part of letting people feel like they have a part in watching it unfold and a say. So it looks like it's here for a while yet. Back to you, Guy. Back to you, Sabra.
Thank you, Leon. We're about to get an update on Bass with Casey.
Yes, there's a lot going on here in the tally room. Let's go and have a look at Bass. This final seat in Bass is one of the more tricky ones at this point. Don't be surprised if we end the night without that 7th seat clear. We've got at the moment 3 definite Liberals, 2 definite Labor members, a definite Green. That's 6, so there's a 7th seat up for grabs. And what you've then got is, look at what's left over. 0.3 here, 0.2 here, 0.34 here, 0.37, 0.37, 0.27, 0.16. There's a lot of people in the mix there. You would think, given where Labor is behind all of these, you would think this is most likely a contest between the Liberal Party and the Greens. The Greens don't, again, just like Braddon, don't have that many friends down the bottom of the ticket, so that may advantage the Liberal Party. We've got all the on-the-day votes in Bass. We're waiting on pre-polls still. You might think that also might slightly advantage the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party tended to grow its vote in the north on pre-polls last year. The Greens fell back a little bit on pre-polls, so you might slightly favour the Liberal Party picking up a 4th, which is, you know, they've only got 3.3 quota. They're a chance at winning a 4th seat in Bass. But it's unclear, and we're probably not going to know the result of that one tonight. But a very interesting battle there. It's plausible that in both northern seats, Premier Jeremy Rockliff will return 4 seats in those.
Casey Briggs, thank you very much for that. Erica Betts, 4 seats in each of those northern seats.
That'd be a great result, and having a look at the Bass figures, George Razay, shooters and fishers, you would expect that the majority of those preferences might come to us. The other ungrouped of 0.37, I'm not sure who those people are, so it's hard to predict where those preferences would go, but I don't think...
Casey's just got a point he wants to make on this.
One thing I just wanted to say as well, Bridget Archer's on 1.5 quota in Bass. She's a very high-profile candidate. There can be a tendency for high-profile candidates to have their votes leak out of the group into other groups, so that would be maybe something working against the Liberal Party there. So another reason it's a messy, complicated contest. We could have the potential of some leakage out of the ticket there.
Well, look, that's a fair observation, and those things have happened in the past, and it may happen as well with Jeremy Rockliff's high vote in Braddon, that there might be some leakage because they like him as Premier, but then sort of bit of insurance, they start voting for somebody else. But I would have thought on the trend, generally, it's looking relatively positive, but I'm not going to start counting chickens.
All right. Sarah Lovell, are you counting
can I bring
chickens?
You spoke earlier tonight about the high number of pre-polls, and you expressed some degree of confidence that they might favour you. We saw in the federal election crazy swings back and forward on pre-poll votes. What is it that gives you any slim degree of confidence that those pre-polls might favour Labor?
So we had some polling in the last week of the campaign that showed that people that had voted early were more likely to have voted Labor than Liberal. So that's what that's based on. Our projections are showing now status quo, basically, for the Labor and Liberal Party in terms of numbers, 10 to Labor, 14 to the Liberals, and obviously that crossbench with some different faces than we've had in the previous parliament.
And 10 being the number that you started the night with, where there was the discussion that 10 would be the number perhaps that you might look to form a government with support of the Greens.
Well, what we said, we didn't really put a number on it. What we said is we'll have a look at the makeup of the parliament once we know what that looks like, and we will work with whatever the parliament is that's elected. Now,
I think Leon said that his intel was 10.
I didn't have that same intel, Leon, but you did this to me last year too.
I did do that to you last year as well. The same people.
The number's not important.
No.
What we've said is we will see the makeup of the parliament once it's all determined and all the pre-polls are counted and all the preference distribution is done, and we will have a look and see what we've got to work with.
Sarah, can I just tell you my reflection on what happened last year? You're referring to the fact that when you won 10 seats, the people that were getting in touch with me saying under no circumstances should Rebecca White try and form a government from here. That was the information I was getting. It was a real attempt to sort of enter leadership, to not give her a chance. It's the opposite this time. So people are saying to me, if we get 10, we've got to try. We don't want another 4 years in opposition. We've got to have a go this time. Now, notwithstanding you didn't do it 15 months ago, notwithstanding you didn't do it 6 weeks ago, but there's a real perception this time that you're going to try as hard as you can to make it work. Is that fair?
There's a couple of things that have changed in that, Leon, and I think the first and foremost, is that we've seen Jeremy Rockcliffe as leader of the Liberal Party fail to make a minority government work twice now. We've gone to 2 early elections because he made that decision, and he made the decision the first time round. Second time it was because he lost the confidence of that crossbench. We don't have confidence that he can do that again. We don't want to give him another chance at doing it because we don't want to be back here again in 12 months. Nobody wants that. The other thing that's changed is that this is the second election where there's been a minority parliament elected and a large crossbench, and we have to respect that. That's the will of the Tasmanian community.
There's just been an announcement on the floor of the tally room that Jeremy Rockcliffe will be talking to the tally room in about 10 minutes, and you can probably hear behind me that there are some exuberant Liberal Party supporters that are chanting Rocky, Rocky. In the meantime, Casey Briggs has got an update on Clark, I believe.
Yeah, let's look at the 2 southern seats. First, Clark, just to refresh where we're at on that. Half the vote's in now, and it's looking a pretty status quo result. 2 Liberals, 2 Labor, 2 Greens, and Christy Johnston as the 7th. So let's have a look at who's elected. It's a very similar looking ticket at this point. Christy Johnston, Vicar Bailey and Helen Burnett, the 2 Greens members for Clark who were elected last time, are re-elected. Ella Haddad and Josh Willey, both Labor members, re-elected. Now, what's interesting, though, is if I go, and in fact, why don't we do this by looking at the Liberal ticket in particular, because the one change in Clark will be in the Liberal members. Marcus Vermey has been elected, although his vote that has come down a little bit since we've seen it earlier, but he's well on track for re-election, for election there, I should say. Simon Barakas or Madeline Ogilvie could well be the casualty there, or one of them will definitely be the casualty there. So status quo in party terms, but there is a change of one member of Parliament in Clark. Let's look at Franklin as well. We've still got 2 seats in doubt there. Remember, we said the Liberal Party has a chance of winning 4 off 3.3 quota in Bass. Well, here they're a chance of winning only 2 off 2.65. It's the peculiarities, the vagaries of Hare Clark sometimes, because that 3rd Liberal seat is at risk. So we could see the government go backwards here. Labor would be hopeful of 2, but a definite 1. Peter George is definitely elected Greens. Definitely, this is a sort of quite a messy race for the last couple here. You've got 2 seats left. If that's 2, 1, 1, 1. You've got 2 seats left. You've got David O'Byrne in the mix for it with 0.9 quota. You've got a Labor candidate with 0.82 quota. You've got a Liberal with 0.65 quota, and then there's really no one else down there. So a little bit of a messy contest. 3 candidates racing for 2 seats there.
Casey Briggs, thank you very much for that. Cassie O'Connor, Tasmanian voters have spoken tonight. What do you think they've said?
What they've said is that they want some change. They're not particularly stoked with either party, notwithstanding the increase in the Liberals' votes. There's been a very strong endorsement of the Greens and some of the independents, obviously. But it takes us back to something that Sarah said before. If Labor's attitude, if they're going to seek a path to government, is that this will be a Labor government with a Labor agenda, it is doomed to fail, because you cannot have a stable arrangement that will do justice by the verdict of the Tasmanian people if you swan in there like you own the joint, and particularly if Labor comes in with the depressed vote that they have. In a power-sharing parliament, it's exactly that. And part of the reason we're here is because the Liberals with JLN promised a review of the budget, the S-Lake review, and then they ignored it. A review of the stadium, the Gruen review, then they ignored it. They promised to beef up the Integrity Commission to Andrew Jenner and ignored that as well. So you've got to do this stuff in good faith.
Well, we're looking at the leadership of both the major parties then. Is either leader capable of being collaborative?
Well, if they're not, they have to go. You know, it's that simple. If either of the leaders can't find it in themselves the courage and the maturity, they're in a majority because the Tasmanian people made that choice, then they will have to go and let someone else who can deal with the complexities of a crossbench, can cooperate, collaborate and sometimes compromise.
Cassie O'Connor, would a condition of power sharing with the Greens be Labor relinquishing its support for a stadium?
I'm not going to sit here tonight and put words in Rosalie or the party room's mouth. Obviously, we regard the stadium as a massive folly, something the state clearly can't afford. We know that people are with us on that. But I'm not going to get into sort of a horse trading discussion before we've had the discussion as a party room.
Cassie,
but obviously the only potential member on the crossbench that could be in favour of a stadium would be David O'Byrne. All other members of the crossbench would be anti-stadium.
Well, any smart Premier in that circumstance will understand the reality, you would think. Walk away from the stadium, fight for the team, base the team at York Park, and if there's a conversation to be had another day about a new stadium when we can afford it, well, let's park that for another day. But a smart Premier coming into a minority parliament will drop the stadium.
All right, we're going to get an update.
70% of the members to be elected in general terms are in favour of the stadium. So why would you deny 70% of the Tasmanian population?
We might return to the possibility of the Liberals power sharing with Labor at a later moment, Erica Betts.
We're going to go to Casey Briggs. Casey, you've got an update for us on the touchscreen.
Look, anything's possible in Tasmanian politics, isn't it? Let's refresh ourselves. Let's refresh our memory of where things are at as we wait for Jeremy Rockcliffe to speak. I'm going to start with a change in votes statewide. The Liberal vote is up 3 points. The Labor vote is down 3 and a bit points. The Greens are up a modest 0.5 percentage point. The Nationals have only got 1.5% in this election statewide. Not a very good result for them, but also not a very good result for the Labor Party on the primary vote. Just over a quarter of the vote. That is the worst Labor primary vote since Federation, since the Labor Party has existed in Tasmania under the Hare-Clark electoral system. The Liberal Party is on 39.6. That has been a remarkably stubbornly even number that has not shifted in a very long time. The Greens have 14.4, and as I said, Nationals on 1.6. I'll show you the chamber one more time. Here are the seats that we've got as clear victories for one party or the other. Liberal 13, Labor 8, 5 Greens, others 2. I want to colour in some of those likely seats, including the ones we've talked about in Braddon. That gets Labor to 9. Labor could win a 10th. That would be the second seat in Franklin. I can't see Labor getting beyond 10. I think 10 is the maximum for Labor at this point. The Liberals have 14. They could continue to grow from there by another 1 or 2 potentially. The Greens have 5. We said earlier they were in the contest for a 6, maybe. In Franklin, the seats are bleeding together, and there are 3 others in those likelies. That's Christy Johnston, Peter George, and a likely Craig Garland in the next Parliament. These numbers, pretty similar to the last one at this point, pretty similar to the election that we saw just 16 months ago. So I guess there might be some people asking the question tonight, what exactly was the point?
Yep.
Casey, thank you. We are just a couple of minutes away for what we're expecting will be Jeremy Rockliff to talk to the tally room here. Just before we get to your leader's speech in the tally room, across the aisle in Parliament, based on these numbers, the party and the MPs that are going to be most closely philosophically aligned to you are likely to be the Labor Party members. Is there any way that you can actually govern and cherry-pick support from whoever you need with legislation as it comes up?
Oh, I would have thought that with the stadium that should definitely be the case. When over 70% of the Parliament reflects that, one would hope that Labor and the Liberals could cooperate to ensure that that ambitious project is delivered. It's a game changer for our economy. Even the Lord Mayor's own economic consideration of it showed that it would be a boost to Hobart of over $100 million per annum. So that is something that we simply cannot let go of. But look, Liberal and Labor forming a government together, I've got to say, I think it's unlikely, but never say never.
I think it would be the messiest, most unstable Parliament Tasmania has ever seen, and I don't think they're ready for that.
I tell you what, they vote together 90% of the time. In the Legislative Council, when a bill or an issue comes through, it is Labor and the Liberals voting together 90% of the time.
So, Cassie O'Connor, does that mean that you're saying it makes sense for there to be a coalition between Labor and the Liberals?
They're perfect for each other. You know, the grand coalition. Stop the pretense that there's any difference between you both.
That statistic is completely inaccurate. It records divisions only. It doesn't record anything that we all agree on. And it can record 30 votes for one bill. If someone wants to call a division on every clause in a bill, that's how you record
Guy, I can assure you that we're waiting for a phone call from Dean Winter to concede defeat, not to form a coalition.
What guarantees can the Liberal Party give if it manages to get across the line with support from independents that we're not in this position again in 18 months' time if that falls away and we've got another vote of no confidence and a Premier calling an election again? Do you think Tasmanians would stomach another election so soon?
No, and tonight we've seen them punish the Labor Party for being the instigator, and the figures show that Labor are now on the lowest vote ever in the Hare-Clark system, and despite having suffered a vote of no confidence, we've actually seen a growth in the Liberal Party vote, a lift in the Liberal Party vote, which means that more people have confidence in the Premier and the government than they did in 2024. So you've got to ask the question, what was the actual motivation, and what a gross misread of our fellow Tasmanians by the Labor Party and Dean Winter and the Greens and some of the independents to jump onto that bandwagon. And if you want a mature independent that was able to deal with us in a mature, sensible way, it was in fact David O'Byrne, the former Labor leader, who's, as I understand it, is now out-polling the actual Labor leader.
Do you think he'll have his vote? So the question to that point is, will you get his vote this time around, his support this time around? You got to deal with him last time. Do you think you can do it this time?
Look, Jeremy Rockliff was exceptionally good and proper in his dealings, I believe, with a crossbench with each and every one of them. Sure, some of them didn't like what occurred, but of course that's the difficulty with a crossbench, that you had some against the stadium, some in favour. And so then how do you deal with a crossbench when there is that differing view on the crossbench? But looks as though we might be getting somebody important.
I'm being told that might still be a couple of minutes away.
Oh, right.
Cassie O'Connor, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
I'm being told that, in a personality sense, the Greens prefer dealing with Jeremy Rockliff to Dean Winter.
Is that true?
Well, I can't speak for all of the Greens. But, I mean, Jeremy...
I like how long you're thinking about it, though.
Yeah, no, I am thinking about it. Jeremy has a lot of nice qualities. He's kind. He's a good listener. He hasn't covered himself in glory in this past term of government or necessarily one before. He's been quite dishonest about the stadium, so that's a qualified statement. Dean is a sort of shut-off character, and he can be a bit hard, I think, to talk to. Yeah, he can, but that's sort of irrelevant, the personality stuff, isn't it? You just have to get through that because you're dealing with 35 different characters. So whatever the result after tonight, everyone is going to have to be talking to each other, and whoever are the leaders or the Premier, they're going to have to build trust across the Parliament and potentially with their partners in government.
Cassie O'Connor, we've got an update on some numbers with Casey Briggs.
I thought we might actually have a look at the complexion of the new Parliament, some of the members that are going to be entering Parliament. We can focus so much on quotas that we forget about the people sitting on the benches. So a quick look at the new members, the defeated members and who's still in the race. We have 3 new Liberal members of Parliament in the next Parliament. I think that might be the Premier coming out. He's about to come out. Let's proceed until we get that. Bridget Archer, the new member for Bass. Gavin Pearce, the new member for Braddon. So we've got 2 federal members of Parliament entering State Parliament. Now, the Premier, Jeremy Rockcliffe.
Sorry.
No worries. Jeremy Rockcliffe there and his wife, 3 daughters and his mum.
Johnny. Well, thank you all. To all of Tasmanians, I'm very humbled by tonight's result. A little over 6 weeks ago, the Leader of the Opposition forced this unnecessary election on the Tasmanian people by moving a vote of no confidence. Well, tonight, the people of Tasmania in return have said that they have no confidence in the Labor Party to form government. And they have voted to re-endorse our Liberal government. It is our team, the Liberal Party, who will achieve the most seats in this election with a significantly increased vote, and I thank you. And I want to thank all Tasmanians. On that basis, there is some way to go at the conclusion of the counting and the return of the writs. But I intend to visit the Governor and ask her to recommission my government so we can get on with the job for Tasmania. Tasmanians have spoken, as I always have and will continue to do so. Now is the time for those who have had and will have the great honour of being elected to Parliament to work together with goodwill across the chamber in the best interests of all Tasmanians. Each and every one of us who have been elected cannot expect to get 100% of everything we want. We must work together, respect the will of the people, be mature, be pragmatic, but most of all, work in the best interests of all Tasmanians. I want to take this opportunity to thank the people of Tasmania for the great privilege that you have provided me in being a Member of Parliament, a Minister in the Government and Premier of Tasmania for the last 3 years. I also want to acknowledge and thank every single one of the 160 candidates that stood at this election for your courage and your conviction, all of whom have stood to try in their own way to make a positive difference to this wonderful state. To see your name on the ballot paper for the very first time in many cases is a moment I know you will never forget as you become part of Tasmania's very rich democracy. I would especially like to thank all of our Liberal team and our 34 candidates. Thank you so very much. Well done. It has been such a privilege to work with you as I have travelled in every corner of this beautiful state to be with you and alongside you at this election. I am humbled by the loyalty. I'm truly humbled by the loyalty of our parliamentary Liberal team and all of our candidates. Your dedication and your commitment to your community and our Liberal team is extraordinary. Your support has given me enormous strength in what has been a very challenging time, and for that I say thank you. You and all your families can be enormously proud. I also want to thank the people of Braddon for putting your trust in me and electing me for my 8th parliamentary term. Tomorrow, July the 20th, will be the anniversary of my first ever election in 2002, some 23 years ago. So to all the people of Braddon, from Latrobe to Burnie, to Smithton, to Queenstown, and my beloved King Island, I thank you for the great privilege that you have given me to serve your community. Being a Member of Parliament and to stand for election and to serve, this is a tough gig. It is tough on families. And I want to acknowledge Dean Winter as Leader of the Opposition, his wife Alison and family. I know, and especially the people behind me know, how tough this is for our loved ones. Thank you. But this campaign was about building on what we have all achieved together over the course of the last 11 years. One of the strongest economies in the nation, the lowest unemployment on record, 3.8%, and the lowest of any state in Australia. The highest participation of women in the workforce, more people employed than ever before. We have worked so hard to achieve this. The new schools, the upgraded classrooms, the upgraded health facilities across our state, essential infrastructure, cost of living relief, and keeping our communities safe. This has been the focus of our team, and this will continue. I have learnt in public life to make it my job to always stand for something and not against something. Because when you stand for something, you build Tasmania's future. Finally, can I thank my wonderful campaign team, the President of the Liberal Party, Michael McKenna, State Director, Sam McQuestion, my Chief of Staff, Ned Whitehouse, all our wonderful volunteers, and I want to thank each and every single person that has not only worked with me and our team in government, of course, on the campaign as well, but every single person that's worked alongside me in employment for the last 23 years. I'll never forget you. You have provided me with great support, great wisdom, great encouragement, and for that I will always be grateful. Our campaign team, our volunteers, and our Liberal Party members, I say thank you. And finally, to the greatest strength that one could ever have, to my mum, Jerry, to my incredibly supportive wife, Sandra, to Sandra's parents, Terry and Margaret, and to my beautiful daughters, Ruby, Lucy and Holly, I'm so proud of you. Thank you. And to Lucy, who has just turned 18. And voted for the very first time. I do hope you gave your dad number 1. But if you didn't, that's okay, darling. And to my extended family, you have sacrificed a lot in the last couple of decades, especially the last few years. You've been with me through the highs and the lows and everything in between, and I love you all. Once again, let's get on with the job. Let's work together and do the very best we can for this magnificent state of Tasmania. Thank you very much.
The Liberal Premier. All right, that's Liberal Premier Jeremy Rockliff leaving the stage there with his mum and his wife and 3 daughters. He says he's going to visit the Governor to ask to be recommissioned. Eric Abetz.
Look, a fantastic speech by the Premier. It was humble, but it was also stating the facts of an increased Liberal vote, his own personal support in Braddon, and that he has every expectation that the Liberals will be able to form government. So a wonderful speech, and what's more, recognising the Leader of the Opposition, who, in fairness, must be in a world of pain at the moment, and for the Premier to reach out to him and make the comment that he did is indicative of Jeremy Rockliff's character.
Sarah Lovell and Cassie O'Connor also talking about respecting the result and being mature and pragmatic.
Look, he mentioned that towards the end, but he started his speech by saying he was going to the governor to be recommissioned as Premier, with no mention of a crossbench or a minority government. He did this last year, and here we are 16 months later back at the polls because he lost that confidence. I think the days of any leader claiming victory on election night like this, like they've done in the past where there has been a clear majority, are behind us, for now at least. And what I would have liked to have seen from the Premier is a recognition of the fact that the previous Parliament failed and that there is still a long way to go before he or anyone is in a position to be able to claim to form government and be visiting the governor.
Another thing he said in his speech was that tonight's vote is a vote of no confidence in Labor to form government.
Well, I don't agree with that. I think he doesn't have a majority. He hasn't secured a majority of votes. And in fact, more people have voted for someone other than the Liberal Party than have voted for the Liberal Party. And we've seen that two-party preferred polling showing more Tasmanians would prefer a Labor government than a Liberal government. I don't agree with his characterisation. And it's arrogant to stand up and claim victory like that when you haven't secured a majority, and you certainly haven't secured any form of confidence or supply from any of the crossbench.
Cassie O'Connell, was it premature to claim victory?
Well, he did do the same thing last year, and I do agree with Sarah. There's a lot of talking, you'd think, to go before Jeremy Rockliff could confidently tell the governor he would have enough numbers on the floor to get his agenda through. I thought it was interesting that he said we have to be mature in this term of Parliament and work for what's in the best interests of Tasmanians. Clearly that stadium is not in the best interests, but we can't have a Liberal government that goes in there and does more of the same, because we will be at $13 billion in net debt by 2028 if we have a Liberal government that thinks it's got a mandate, even though it's not in majority, to keep doing what it's always done. Because while they might have picked up a seat or two or three tonight, you wouldn't call this a strong and ringing endorsement from the Tasmanian electorate. You just can't.
He said it was time to respect the will of the people. I'm taking that you have a different interpretation of what that might actually mean.
Well, Eric before tried to say because 70% of the elected members are in pro-stadium in the Parliament, that means 70% of Tasmanians are pro-stadium. Untrue. Completely untrue.
Stop pointing, Cassie. Not a good look.
Well, I will point because I'm going to point to Casey Briggs, not Cassie O'Connor. Casey Briggs.
Hey.
Look, just to join this conversation, the Premier has said there that he will go to the governor and ask to be recommissioned. He wants to meet the Parliament, essentially. He's entitled to ask that. Now, if the governor gets advice from other parties saying, well, the Premier will not have the confidence of the House, the governor doesn't have to accept his advice, but also the Parliament doesn't have to accept the recommissioning. Jeremy Rockliff could be reappointed as Premier by the governor. It's happened before. It's how changes of government have happened in Tasmania before. He could face the floor of Parliament and immediately be facing a no-confidence motion. And if that passes, well then it would go back to the governor to recommission somebody else. So that's the sort of process. It's a process we've seen take place before in Tasmania. He's allowed to ask to be recommissioned.
Well, to be fair, the governor in all likelihood will ask Jeremy Rockliff if he has sufficient numbers. So I'm not sure the governor would be just happy to wave off the Premier to test something on the floor without having some assurance that he's got an arrangement.
Erica Betts.
I think that's a fair comment by Cassie. Yeah.
I had to laugh when the Liberal Party supporters were chanting 4 more years. 4 more years has not been an accurate statement since 2014.
And that is what we're hoping for. That's what we want, and that's why we went to the polls.
Is it time that Tasmania actually considers something more permanent to try to create 4-year fixed terms?
Well, you can't have fixed terms when a leader of the opposition seeks to blow the joint up and make it unworkable.
The previous 2 early elections weren't quite like that. The Liberal Party chose to go early, particularly the last one very early. This one might be the exception rather than the rule. Should we have 4-year fixed terms?
Look, I think any government would love to have fixed terms. and if we can make that work, so be it. But let's hope that there is so that there is sufficient goodwill in the Parliament to actually make this one work.
It's often difficult to get the Libs and the Greens to see eye to eye. Should we have 4-year fixed terms? Cassie O'Connor.
Well, there's a lot to be said for 4-year fixed terms, because we wouldn't be in this perpetual cycle that we seem to be in. One of the issues I think that the major parties have with 4-year fixed terms is it's one power, if you like, that the Premier of the day has in calling an election, and that's why I think there's resistance to fixed 4-year terms here.
Erica Betts, clearly we could see a lot of passion already forming about how you'll approach as a pro-stadium party a crossbench that's against it. What about this as an olive branch? Would you consider, as the Minister given carriage for running on the stadium, would you consider saying, OK, we'll put it back in the project of state significance process and support that? Let the Tasmanian Planning Commission look at it and then reflect and respect what they decide on the project. I think that would have a lot of crossbench support, but would you think it's a good idea?
Oh, look, the POS process, the Project of State Significance process, was not something that we as a government wanted before my time. It was foisted upon us by the Parliament as the only pathway forward for the stadium. After the last election, now the 2024 election, we had the Labor Party change their mind quite rightly and adopt Liberal policy, and therefore there was a proper pathway. And Parliament Square had special legislation, and in Adelaide, in South Australia, special legislation for their stadium, Western Australia, special legislation for their stadium, and that is the way that these special projects do in fact come into being. And you know, with the legislation that I introduced, in one of the schedules there was 2,500 pages of actual detail in relation to the stadium. So huge amount of detail, and at the end of the day, Leon, what's the safety valve in all this? The Parliament will decide. The Parliament will vote
but the
whether or
Project of
not
State
to do
Significance
this.
process lets the Tasmanian Planning Commission, which is still ongoing.
It's ongoing.
Right? So why not just let that run its course and then listen to and reflect
The
what's going
Planning
on?
Commission is scheduled to deliver its final report around about the same time that this next Parliament is expected to sit, Erica Betts.
Look, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I think the POS or the TPC was looking at September for a report, if
That's
I
when
recall.
Parliament's going to be back.
And I would imagine the Parliament may be recalled before that. But that said, nobody was expecting, or we weren't, that Labor and the Greens would combine to blow up the joint, and the Labor Party have suffered the consequences tonight, getting the lowest vote in their history since Hare Clark. So,
just on that, Erica Betts, the Labor Party's primary vote did go up on pre-polls at the last election. We've got about nearly double the number of pre-polls this election. A similar trend might actually have that number a lot closer to the status quo of the previous election.
Guy, that may well be right, and time will tell.
Erica Betts, do you accept that there is a significant anti-stadium sentiment? Do you therefore acknowledge that it wasn't communicated well with the Tasmanian people, that there is a perception that a deal was done behind closed doors, mainlanders, the AFL, telling Tasmanians what to do?
Look, it'd be fair to say the stadium issue was a divisive issue. I had very good, solid people telling me for the first time ever they couldn't vote Liberal because of the stadium. I had others who had been lifelong Labor voters saying, we only trust you to deliver the stadium, so we're going to vote for you. So has it been a divisive issue? Yes.
Will it go ahead?
Yes, I have every confidence that it will go ahead. Because if Tasmania doesn't grab this opportunity, we will be seen as a place where you can't do development. And yeah, keep in mind, 240 million from federal Labor coming into this, 375 million from the AFL coming into this. This is a huge lick of money.
Can I just say something quickly, Airlie? It's not that the stadium wasn't communicated well.
That is just an announcement that in 10 minutes, Dr. Rosalie Woodruff, the leader of the Greens, will be entering the tally room to make her speech. Can we just hit hold on that?
No.
We're now just approaching 250,000, 250,000 votes counted. Casey Briggs is going to give us an update on what that looks like in the chamber at the moment.
And I'll say we're nearing the end of what we're going to get tonight. There's only a few pre-poll counting centres yet to come before the count will be concluded for tonight, with more to come tomorrow. But what I wanted to show you is, as we've been hearing from Jeremy Rockcliffe and looking through the figures, we've been trying to firm up the seats that are in doubt to get a bit of a picture of at least what the most likely version of the next Parliament might look like. Let's start with a reminder of the seats that we're sure about. The Liberal Party with 13, Labor with 8, the Greens with 5 and 3 others. We've talked about Braddon a bit already, which is, firming up in one direction, but we're not 100% there yet, but it's certainly looking one way. We've done a similar process in Franklin and some of the other seats as well. If we add some likelies, this is where we're starting to get to. Labor on 10, but no more. The Greens on 5. Likely 5, maybe a chance at a 6th. 14 Liberals and 4 others, which is a very familiar set of numbers for those that were watching at 6:01 p.m. tonight. There are 2 seats left. That's 32 accounted for in the sort of likely basket. 2 seats left. One of them is in Bass, and genuinely Bass is a bit of a unknown quantity at this point. It is. We've got a lot of candidates, a lot of party groups sitting on sort of between 0.2 and 0.4 of a leftover quota. So that is just anyone's guess at this point. We're not going to know that one tonight. And the other seat that we've got quite a bit of uncertainty on is the seat of Lyons, where there's one more seat up for grabs. This Shooter, Fisher and Farmer candidate, that's a ticket of 1, sitting on 0.59 quota. They're pretty well placed. I wouldn't go so far as to say they're on track for victory or anything like that, but they're pretty well placed at this point. They're doing fairly well. You'd think the Nationals might be a bit of a support for the sort of conservative side of politics there. There's not a whole lot else beyond in the ungroups and Angela offered. So a bit of uncertainty there, potentially another Liberal, potentially a Shooter, Fisher, Farmer. There could be, it's a confusing one, it's a messy one. Again, we're not going to know that one tonight. But if I return us to the chamber, the likely chamber that we're looking at, and just talk about, the Mr. Rockcliffe has said he's going to ask to be recommissioned and meet the Parliament. If the opposition doesn't want that, they're going to have to come forward and present an alternative to the governor before that happens, which means they're going to have to start hitting the phones if they want to avoid the Premier being recommissioned. Because the Premier is just not going, the Governor, is just not going to appoint an opposition as Premier, without the sort of formal advice from enough people. 18 members of Parliament saying they would support them. So that's the lay of the land, much the same as it was. The difference is potentially, we'll hear from Dean Winter later, potentially Labor might try to form government from here, when last year in much the same position they declined to.
Thank you, Casey. We were